Hi, everybody. This is Julissa. Thank you again for coming back in and listening to my podcast. I wanted to try something different. I guess as you guys know, this is my third episode here in my podcast, and I wanted to somehow I feel like I have a lot of stories to share, and we all have stories to share, but I feel like I have unique stories that not a lot of people get to experience them, whether they could be good or bad. But um, I'm deciding to share some stories that I guess I never really speak to other people about. But anyways, today is Friday, January 18, 2022. It's been crazy week, but the good thing about lately is just is I mean it's good and bad. The days are just flying by, and this is so crazy because you know even today I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like, wow, like when you do a lot of posting on social media and then you go back to see how that post is doing. I was like, I posted that for 2 hours ago. Like it feels like I just did that though. It is insane to me, guys. I feel like we're in it fast forward. But anyways, whoever you are listening to my podcast, I wanted to say first, I am a fashion designer. I also do YouTube, and as you can see now, you can tell now, I do a podcast. And I was born in the Dominican Republic, and you can find more information about me by going through my website, julisadesigns.com. I have my studio where I create my stuff in downtown Danbury. But I wanted to come here and speak about a story that just came to my head. I'm not sure why, but I've been having a very weird dreams interest lately. And, I just, today, Friday, I went to see my mom real quick after work. And, she's staying with my sister. So I went to see her real quick. And I was just, it's so cute to see her. Um, my mom has dementia, and she's suffering from that for a couple years now. She needs care 24/7. So we're very grateful that my sister decided to be able to do that and have her in her home and having people come over like all the time to take care of her too, of my mom. So that, it takes a lot to do that. But I'm very grateful that she's able to do so. But it was just so cool to see my mom today. I was there Wednesday. Today is just Friday, but I feel like I miss her so much. Anyway, so going back to speaking about my mom, like, one thing I'm gonna say about me is that, I know some people might have a hard time hearing this, but I don't. One of the things that you can ask me, I will answer back to you will be, what is the thing that you hate the most? I really hate divorce. And I'm so afraid of divorce. It's so crazy because, it's so crazy. I was not even going to talk about this, but I hate divorce so bad that I'm so willing to, like, I just don't understand how people can go from being so in love to being, just scared away from me. And that is one of my biggest fear. And the reason that I'm mentioning divorce is the fact that, I grew up, my parents divorced when I was very young. My dad left when I was basically a baby, and seeing my mom taking care of us you know, taking care of us by herself, because it's not like she had like family, like ready available family to help her. It was just her and me and my sister. So my mom became, I mean, I guess that's her personality too. She was very strong, and it takes a lot to raise two children by yourself and and also have a career, because my mom had a really good job in the Dominican Republic before we came here to the United States. So to see her just taking care of us, it was, you know, we could, she was our world growing up. Like, and this is why we're still so close to her. We're so caring towards her too because of that, I believe. And besides the fact that we love her so much, but seeing her, being so strong, dealing with raising us and being by herself and, you know, paying for everything and going to a job and all of that. Like, I admire that on her so much and having to be so strong too. And, she had a lot of street smarts and things like that. But anyways, the reason that I'm talking about her and, divorce and all of that is that because of that, you go through a separation, and it might, a lot of people say it affects the kids. Yes, affects the kids. It might not happen in the moment, but throughout life, what I learned from myself after seeing this whole divorce thing throughout life, like, it affects you so much. Even like, you look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I see it now. I see how the divorce affected me. And like I said, even though I was a baby, it doesn't affect you when it happens at the moment, being a child of a divorce marriage, but you see it like years after. It's so crazy. But anyways, that's the only reason why I wanted to mention divorce in this episode, was the fact that she raised us by herself. My dad, he was present, via phone and sending, our, I guess you can say, some type of money monthly for us. He moved out of the country. He came to New York first, and but it's not like he was in a day-to-day type of appearance that whatever we needed, he was right there, like in front of us. So my mom had to deal with all of that. He was a distant parent, I guess you can say. And you know we went through a situation, like, we grew up in a very me and my sister, we were raised in a very, I guess you can call, very nice area in Santo Domingo. um they is very, very famous. I mean, I love the Zona Colonial, which is a very touristic type of area. And I'm sure if you've been to Santo Domingo and you've been to, you know to the Dominican Republic, and you've been to that area, when I mention Zona Colonial, that's a very distinct. I mean, every day, just walking down from school to the house, all you will see is like tourist guys with a group of people just talking about the streets and stuff like that. And a lot of those groups will stop by our house where we grew up. And it was a very exclusive neighborhood, and it still is. So, I have so many memories of that area. It's so crazy, and I loved it too. I loved it. And, you know, we had, so we moved there. I don't know how old I was. That wasn't like our original home. That was actually my grandmother's home, which is, it was owned, or I don't know if it still is, it was owned by my grandfather's aunt. And she saw the family came from a different town in the Dominican to Santo Domingo, and they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna give them my house so they can live in there. So my grandmother and my grandfather moved there. They raised their kids, and then when my mom got married, and then when the divorce happened, I guess you can say, she took us back and moved in the house where she used to live with her mom and siblings. So, and that's how we ended up in that house, a huge historic house in Zona Colonial. And what I remember a lot from the house is growing up with this man, this neighbor that we had. He was the next door neighbor. So it was a very weird family, because it was a mom that lived there with her two boys, and they were not just like 14-year-old boys. They were already adults. I don't know if when we moved, maybe were one of them was like 18, and like, I know they were adults already. So they were adults, and one of them had like a mental issue. He was involved, he you will that's the guy that you will always see when you will come from the school. Like we will come from the school, and he was always outside smoking, and he will be yelling out stuff. And he always looked to me. What I remember about him was that he always seems to be drunk. And we knew who he was. He was the next door neighbor and things like that. I knew his name, and I know he smells really bad, and it always looked like he was smoking. And what I don't remember being afraid of him, but I remember that when we were at the time, me and my sister would come back walking from school. My grandfather made the effort to always be around, like waiting for us, because they always say, if he better watch, like talking about that young man, the next door neighbor, my family will always say things like, he better watch himself if he ever tries to do something to you or your sister. And my grandfather was like that. My mom will say things about him too, like threatening him. And I remember whenever he tried to get loud, the neighbor, or out of hand, or sometimes when he would like come by our front door, it only took like somebody to raise his voice to him, and he would go away. Whether he was drunk or smoking, whatever he was in that day, he would go away. And then there were days where he was like very to himself, like he was not drinking or smoking, and he would see us coming from walking back from school back home, and he will stop traffic so we can cross the street. And he was like, he will stop traffic, he will stop everybody. And he was very, very gentle and very like amicable, I guess you can say. And that's why I'm like, I don't think I ever felt afraid of him, because then he never crossed the line. I think he got so many threats by my grandfather or my mom or whoever in the family. And then when he was on his good days, like sober days, he was very like protective of me and my sister. But anyways, this family lived there for so many years. And I remember the mom, it was an older lady, which didn't seem like she was really the mom. It's almost like she raised him and the brother just out of compassion. To be honest, I don't think that was the birth mom of both of them. And then the other brother was the one that was like I guess you can say, the good one. He went to school. He was a painter, and I believe he still is a painter, very well known in Zona Colonial. I think he used to teach art too. One time he helped me with my art project, and he did such a great job. I will never forget that, because he was teaching me about paints and doing art, and he was so dedicated. And his name was Tony. I remember that. And I remember him being like the good one. And whenever the other one got out of hand, because they had their fights, and they had their fights, and we will hear screaming and stuff, and Tony will come in like late from after school or whatever he was doing, and things got settled. Like you could hear everything going back to normal, because if the other one was going crazy, hitting the mom or something, Tony will come in, will just settle things down. And one thing I have to say, because this is so strange, even though it was a huge house, and in my side of the house, my family, and there were a lot of people in our house. And besides me and my sister, my mom, it was my grandmother, my aunt, my grandfather, and my other cousin who would stay there like some nights, and some other nights she wouldn't be there, but she had her own room there too. And then everybody else who came to visit from New York or the other towns, like every weekend, we always had guests coming over. So the house was always packed. And on the other side of the house, it was that mom and the two adult boys, the two the painter and the other guy. But one thing I have to say is that we all share a bathroom, which is so insane. But we all share the bathroom. But anyways, so I remember just living through that. And there were days that, like I said, we would come back from school and everything was great. And there were days that our grandfathers will be waiting. Um, my grandfather, you knew something was up the minute you look outside and you see the door open. My grandfather sitting, I can see him right now. My grandfather sitting at the front door and on the side, like hiding. And he had this type of weapon, metal weapon that he always carried with himself when there was trouble. And you know something was up because he would just be like sitting by the front door and on his side without it showing to the, for people to see, he had that metal piece of item, that he used to just have there just in case something happened. And I'm not talking about he had the door open and it was like 10 p.m. at night. It could have been like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. But the minute that he saw the neighbor getting all drunk or something, he would just sit there to protect his family. And we were like, oh, what's happening? Abuelo is sitting again by the front door with the metal piece, holding the metal piece. What's happening? And he's like, oh, he's getting a little riled up over there, so I'm just here checking. So anyway, so a lot of stuff happened with that kid. And I say a kid because he had no job, he didn't go to school, he was always just drunk or smoking somewhere. And I remember there were many days that I will see him get picked up by this large SUV. Like it was like an SUV that will come by and pick him up and just take him and then drop him off again. I don't know what was happening, but I remember noticing that and not really saying anything to anybody. In those houses, like we had like a secret room that the window was facing the front of the house, and me and my sister, we used to go to that little room. It was like an attic, and we love going there and play. And one time, I remember I was just in that room. I think I was by myself, just playing around. And then I saw this large SUV, black SUV, came by, and it stopped right by our front door, and the door opened. And the guy, the crazy neighbor, came out of the house, got into the car, and the SUV drove so fast. I was like, oh wow, they just got him like that. That's crazy. And then a few hours later, they will come and drop him off again. I just thought that was a little strange. But anyways, that guy got even crazier because one day we were down by Plaza España, which is another famous tourist area around Zona Colonial, and we were walking. It was late at night. We were walking Plaza España with our cousins that came. My mom's cousin came from New York, and every time somebody comes visit, we live right in the best area, so we will take them out to see sightseeing and stuff and get ice cream and just walk down Plaza España, El Conde, and things like that around that area. So we were like, let's go back home. The minute we were coming back home, it was already late, and we were coming back home. And by the time we hit the corner, we see our neighbors calling. We saw all these people like near the house, and we were like, "What is going on?" And they were like, "Come, come! The neighbor next door just burned down the house." And we were like, "What?" And I remember my mom had to deal with all of that, having visitors too. It was just the most scary thing I ever experienced in my life. Because at those days we didn't have cell phones, so we were out, just walking with our friends that came from New York. And coming back, we were so tired. You do a lot of walking over there. We had no cell phones, so there the neighbors are waving us like, "Finally, you guys are returning back home. Come, come!" The neighbor just said, your crazy neighbor. They used to say, "Loco, el loco de al lado." The crazy neighbor set the house on fire, and it was the most scariest thing I ever seen, guys. But I'm gonna do episode 2 on this, part 2 of this episode. So please come back and listen to it because you're gonna see how God worked all of that out and everything that happened with the guy in, my family and how the house turned out to be. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please come back and listen to part two. God bless everybody. Have a good night.